Welcome back, guys. This is the fight against poverty. My name is Nikita Smith, and today we're going to be talking about the age of filibuster. The age of filibuster. What I mean by that is the filibuster process has been used a lot more by the Senate in the past years, and I think we should really take note of that. Um, a filibuster is when they want to continue debate on legislation on a law. And I believe that it's time to break our ties with the filibuster, especially when it comes to the needs of people like as far as Americans. Um, I feel like it's being used too much. It should be a limit, like per year, on what's a filibuster and what not. I mean, if a law gets the votes, it should be passed. Simple as that. Um, Yeah, it's time to break the chain off of filibuster. As you can see my picture here, it's a big heavy burden that we have, and it continues the process of debate. So and it ended up taking longer than usual. So with that being said, I'm gonna get into the next slide. I'm gonna get my red pointer. About filibuster and culture, the Senate's tradition of unlimited debate has allowed for the use of the filibuster, a loosely defined term for action designed to prolong debate and delay or prevent a vote on a bill, resolution, amendment, or other debatable question. Prior to 1917, the Senate rules did not provide for a way to end debate and force a vote on the measure. That year, the Senate adopted a rule to allow a two-thirds majority to end filibuster, a procedure known as cloture. In 1975, the Senate reduced the number of votes required for cloture from two-thirds of Senate's voting to three-fifths of all senators duly chosen and sworn, or 60 of the 100-member Senate. Um, So to invoke cloture, it needs to get that 60 vote threshold. In most cases, the bill dies in the Senate more times than often. Um, yeah, and as you can see, this has been around for a long time, and I feel like we need to let go of some of those old traditions, kind of archaic traditions. So, and it's not a simple process. It takes a long time. There's other things you can do to speed up the process, like reconciliation. You could, if the Democrats are in the head of the White House of the majority, then the vice president breaks the tie with her vote. If they get the 50 votes, and reconciliation can avoid the filibuster. So on to the next slide. As you can see here, cloture motions. Senate action on cloture motions, motions filed, votes on cloture, 149 would stop uh, the debates. So if the cloture was invoked, that means that the filibuster worked and the debate ended, and that means that 149 of the 158, 149 times that the cloture got invoked, and it ended up not passing the Senate. I believe that's the right terminology, and it's kind of hard to follow. But as you can see, the number of these has went up since 1983. Only 41 motions filed compared to 202. And as you can see, the numbers they have risen over the past years. Only adding the longer voting process on these legislations, and ultimately leading the people for left to suffer. Like Mitch McConnell, he blocked the $2,000 stimulus checks, and that was in time during the pandemic when it was during the end of Trump presidency. He blocked the $2,000 stimulus checks, and that ended up not passing in the Senate, and it ended up failing, and they ended up reducing it to 600. So I believe that was one of these for 2020. But the numbers speak for themselves. Like, we're in the age of filibuster, where it's very popular. I think Congress is starting to realize that a lot of laws, a lot of things need to be discussed and up for debate, which I agree with, but to a certain extent, like, it's being used too many times, and that just signifies the division in Congress, like I said in the earlier episode. On to the next slide.
I was just looking back today at when Republicans were in the majority in the Senate and President Trump was in office. During that time, right, Republican Senate leader Mitch McConnell is running the Senate, Trump is in the White House. During that time, Mitch McConnell and the Senate Republicans went nuclear and decided it would be a majority vote only, it would be 50 votes only, to confirm Supreme Court nominees. Then Mitch McConnell went nuclear another time and decided it would be a majority vote only. It would be 50 votes only needed for lower level executive branch nominees.
So what she's talking about is the recent debate they had over voting rights, and she's talking about all the times this minority leader Mitch McConnell, he went by the filibuster rules, and he used a vice president as a tiebreaker, and he basically nuked. The, he avoided the filibuster basically, and when the Democrats tried to do it, he ended up blocking it. Well, he was one of the people that voted against it. So the voting rights bill didn't get passed as of recently. That was around Martin Luther King Day, which was the 17th. Today is the 26th. So last week. Let's continue listening.
Then he went nuclear a third time and decided he would use the filibuster rule, and it would only have to be a majority vote, 50 vote threshold for federal district court judges. President Biden has been president. The United States Senate has decided to go nuclear, as they say, to require just a majority vote, just 50 votes on a bill to fund the government last year. They also did it. They went nuclear. They decided it would be just a majority vote, just 50 votes, for a random vote that didn't go anywhere about vaccine requirements. I mean, we use the phrase go nuclear because it's supposed to be the end of the world, right? It's supposed to be mutually assured destruction. Turns out they go nuclear all the time. They go nuclear and decide that a 50 vote majority is enough, that we can't have a 60 vote threshold for a particular type of action in the Senate or a particular type of legislation or a particular amendment or a particular vote.
She's saying they do this all the time. It's quite common as of lately, and I think if they're bypassing it, if they're finding ways to bypass the filibuster, then obviously something needs to be done. Maybe switch legislation up a little bit. Maybe the process of it all maybe should be adjusted to a certain way, a certain limit. You can filibuster that way. Most of these laws are getting passed, and it's affecting people not as soon as possible rather than later. And when they do these debates, and sometimes most of the times it ends with the Senate it failing in the Senate after weeks of discussion and preparation and all that they did, and no law ends up getting passed. I think maybe a law behind that should be done, and they do that sometimes through bipartisanship. Make laws up so it can actually pass. So let's continue listening.
It's not all the time. Now, even in this Senate, even when the Republicans are in control, with Trump in the White House, it happens all the time. But Democratic Senators Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema keep saying that this would be an unprecedented thing to do. No, that's absolutely not true. They just keep saying they won't do it for voting rights.
So yeah, you got two senators who are Democratic. They didn't want to vote for. Well, they did vote, and they voted against this voters' rights because they believe is not necessary, or the election process the voting process is secure now. And, they're just not for it. They're not even for Biden's Build Back Better plan, and that just lets you know that this filibuster is a tough feat. It blocks laws from getting passed, and sometimes the debate is necessary, but on the other hand, it's kind of pointless if no law is being passed. You know that I guess it brings light to be like, okay, we need to do something about whatever this legislation is discussing, and maybe it sometimes it needs further debate, and sometimes it really doesn't. Most of the time, something should be done. They're also thinking about the budget for the economy, the whole country, which I get, but at the same time, things need to get done. It's been real inconsistent. They've made promises, and certain things haven't happened yet, like the child tax credit. Joe Manchin is against that. At least he wants to put a work requirement on it, things like that. So it's things like that. Um, that we should know about the filibuster process and things like that.
29. When it comes to YouTube, there are a few
This is
topics
about
you should never
strong
make a video
thermal.
about unless you want the comment section to become a minefield of controversy and angry 3- and 4-letter words. Jeffrey Epstein, the Middle East, religion, healthcare policy, education policy, and of course, Jar Jar Binks. With all that said, please enjoy this video about two things that everyone agrees about that are sure to stir up no controversy at all: politics and racism. That's because today we're talking about the longest filibuster in U.S. history, conducted by former U.S. Senator Strom Thurmond in an attempt to prevent the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1957. The filibuster is a weird, kind of confusing rule that allows U.S. senators to stop or delay a bill from passing the Senate by refusing to end debate on it. And while today the filibuster is an accepted, even normal part of Senate procedure, it began just like life, the universe, and everything, as a complete accident. You see, back when the Senate was created in 1789, they had a rule that said debate on a bill could be ended by a simple majority vote. But then, in 1806, then Vice President Aaron Burr, who was famous for killing Alexander Hamilton and then starting a musical about it, argued that the rule was unnecessary because it had never been used, and so the Senate got rid of it. A few decades later, some senators had a realization that would forever change the U.S. Senate. Because there was now technically no rule that could force debate on a bill to end, if a senator or group of senators just kept on talking, the Senate wouldn't be able to stop them to call for a vote on that bill, and without a vote, it could never become a law, and so the filibuster was born and then quickly became very...
What should be noted is that as some of these congressmen and women will go to ends length to prevent a bill from passing. Just like in this case, the Civil Rights Act, he spoke for 24 hours, the longest filibuster in history. He spoke for 24 hours to stop that law from passing. And that should be noted in history. And we all should take note of that it's some things like that still exist. People are really against certain things and feel that the country doesn't need that, and that's really their opinion. And when they debate, they kind of throw out different ideas at each other, why and why not, and things of that nature. But yeah, 24 hours talking about something that you know should be passed, and you're just going against it. Like nobody's really supporting you, as we're gonna see in the video. Nobody wanted to deal with racism at that time, and he was really Strom Thurmond was really for segregation. So let's continue listening.
Annoying. So annoying, in fact, that eventually its power was limited. In 1917, a group of anti-war senators kept using the filibuster to prevent the passage of military funding for World War I, and President Woodrow Wilson, notable for being memorialized in D.C. by a highway bridge, demanded that the Senate do something about it. In a truly un-Senate-like move, the Senate took decisive action and created something called a cloture vote, which meant that a two-thirds majority of senators could vote to end the filibuster. Things have changed a bit since then, which I'll get to later, but that's how things stood when our story began. The year was 1957. The bill was the Civil Rights Act of 1957, intended to protect the voting rights of Black Americans, and the bill's opponent was South Carolina Senator Strom Thurmond. Now, on the one hand, trying to stop the passage of a landmark civil rights bill may seem like a pretty bad move, but on the other hand, there is no other hand because this was definitely bad. While the bill was supported by the majority of senators, there was not a two-thirds majority that would be willing to vote for cloture and end the filibuster, meaning that Thurmond was free to filibuster for as long as he wanted. However, it wasn't going to be easy because while the Senate's rules don't limit a filibuster's length, they still do put a number of limitations on filibusterers. People who are filibustering. They cannot sit or lean on anything. They cannot leave the Senate floor for any reason, including bathroom breaks. And most importantly, they cannot stop talking at any point except to take questions from other senators. It's all like a big Mr. Beast video, but instead of getting $10,000 if you finish, you get to be racist. Thurmond prepared for his filibuster by taking daily steam baths in the preceding days in order to dehydrate his body and reduce the need for bathroom breaks. And then, at 8:54 p.m. on August 28, 1957, he was recognized by the Senate leader and began to speak. One interesting facet of the filibuster is that while senators cannot stop talking, there are no rules on what they have to talk about, and so filibusters have included everything from reading the phone book to reading a recipe for fried oysters to reading the Dr. Seuss book, Green Eggs and Ham. Strom Thurmond, however, stayed remarkably on topic, mainly reading voting laws, Supreme Court decisions, and passages from pro-segregation books. He also occasionally fielded questions from fellow senators and snacked on diced-up pieces of pumpernickel bread and cooked hamburger meat, which are almost as gross as his opinions on civil rights. After 3 hours, Republican Senator Barry Goldwater decided to help out by making an insertion to the congressional record, which allowed Thurmond to take his one and only bathroom break. In theory, other senators could.
Well, it's debatable. Everything's debatable, but in this instance, like the civil rights bill, like everybody knew something should be done, and it's like he still stood up there for 24 hours to talk about why it shouldn't be passed. So there's something obviously wrong with that, because it's a lot of things. Like even the $2,000 stimulus checks, Americans wanted that, and Mitch McConnell kind of blocked that. So I think that's interesting that these senators will go to ends meet to not have a bill passed. Get in other people's ear, all type of things. Just the nature of it all is interesting.
Too, but they chose not to, presumably because helping the racist guy stop the Civil Rights Act was probably not the best look. In order to combat this problem, Thurmond's aides set up a bucket in the Senate cloakroom that the senator could use to relieve himself while keeping one foot on the Senate floor, which I wish I could say was the grossest thing to ever take place there, but we all know that's not true. Eventually, at 9:12 p.m. on August 29th, over a full day after it had began, Thurmond's speech finally came to an end, and despite his best efforts, the Civil Rights Act of 1957 was passed. Filibusters have changed a bit since the days of Strom Thurmond and his bucket. The 1970 rules change dropped the threshold for a cloture vote from two-thirds to three-fifths, or 60 of the 100 senators, and made it so that in order to filibuster, senators no longer have to actually stand and talk for as long as they can. These days, so long as 41 senators refuse to vote for cloture, a bill can't move to a vote, regardless of whether or not there's someone actually standing up and filibustering. Today, When you see headlines that some senator is doing a traditional filibuster, it's to draw attention to a cause, not to actually stop a bill from passing.
Yeah, so we just learned a little bit from history, and when the cloture is invoked, that means they stopped the bill from further debate, and they ended it basically. So that's something to take note of. And we're just gonna go to the next slide. So this slide is going to be talking about the clotures and how many they did since 2007. I'm just gonna start reading. If you want to measure the extent of blocking in the Senate, you first need to look at the number of actual votes on cloture. That adds up to 309 since 2007. Then you have to look at the figure for cloture in vote, which I had in the table in the previous slide, which means the Democrats prevailed in the vote. That adds up to 189, a success rate for the Democrats of better than 60%. Subtracting 189 from 309, that means 120 Senate actions have been blocked during McConnell's tenure as minority leader. Our colleagues, maybe I got that mixed up. When you subtract the 189, the cloture and vote, the Democrats were successful. That means 120 times action. Yeah, it's confusing, but we're gonna read more about it. Our colleagues at factcheck.org on October 3rd also examined this data and came to the same conclusion that Grimes used exaggerated figures. They also identified 6 cases in this tally of 120 when McConnell filed cloture votes but was blocked by Democrats. On November 20th, PolyFact weighed in and scored the claim at half true. By contrast, during the 8 years that Tom Daschle was minority leader, not counting a brief period in 2001, here's how the statistics work out. There were 210 votes in that period, and cloture was invoked 67 times. Thus, Democrats blocked 143 actions in that period, meaning the Republican majority had a success rate of 32%. So that he was the minority leader of the Senate, and the Democrats blocked 143 actions in that period. So the cloture was invoked 67 times. So you minus that and you get 143 times the Democrats blocked it. So yeah, that tells you that they've been using it a lot lately, and they've really been dependent on that to block certain things. And I'm not saying who's right or wrong. I'm just saying the times it has been used is frequent. It should be a limit on it. There should definitely be a limit on how many times you can do that, especially with the case now to where they're doing it so much. Nothing's being passed. On to the next slide. Why are the Senate and House so different? I Googled that. Notice that members of the House are elected every 2 years, whereas senators are elected for 6 year terms. Senators represent their entire states, but members of the House represent individual districts. The number of districts in each state is determined by a state's population. So I found that interesting, senators, because there are some Democratic senators in the Senate that have seats, and they serve 6 year terms, and that's interesting. that they serve longer terms. So you got kind of a seniority type of thing when it comes to the Senate. Um, I feel like it should be a little different. Maybe they should just be at 4 years or maybe 5 years, but 6 year terms is a long time. And then you have people like Mitch McConnell who keep getting reelected and yeah, they keep calling on him to be the minority leader, so he's gonna be blocking things for a lot longer. But I found that interesting. It's something that I didn't know. The number of districts in each state is determined by a state's population. Yeah, that's something I found interesting when I Googled that. How long has Mitch McConnell served in the Senate? I also Googled that. And he has had a seat since 1985. That's a long time to be a senator, bro. That's a long, long time to just be voting on laws and with that people get probably intimidated by how long he's been there and feel like he's always in the right or has a great idea about what's going on, but at the same time he doesn't, because he blocked $2,000 stimulus checks and Americans needed that and wanted it. It's clear that paying cash payments in the form of a lump sum or monthly has proved to work. So he went against that idea, and I'm not bashing on him, but he has been in office for a long time. On to the next slide. Mitch McConnell is the United States Senate Republican leader. He is the longest serving Senate Republican leader in American history, unanimously elected to the lead the conference 8 times since 2006. Unanimously, that means uh, like Steph Curry won unanimous MVP, and that's where I think the people, they don't really vote. It's just unanimous. Like meaning like it's kind of just picked because he's just been there so long. And then what's up to McConnell on the $2,000 stimulus check proposal? And then I got that from this article. In effect, by blocking a clean vote on an increased stimulus check, McConnell is keeping his options open. He can later let it come to the floor without conditions or without conditions acceptable to the Democrats, or he can effectively kill the idea by inserting it in a poison pills that Trump has endorsed but Democrats won't accept. Republicans supporting a bigger check are unlikely also to repudiate Trump's additional demands. Any move to approve the Cash Act would require 12 Republican votes, assuming all the Democrats are on board. So McConnell retains the flexibility to move in either direction as the 116th Congress winds down. It will end when the 117th Congress is sworn in on January 3rd. We'll find out on or shortly after January 5th if Mitch McConnell is going to retain or lose control of the Senate. If his reign is truly at its end, it's fitting he's going out on a characteristically devious note. Yeah, and he uh it's really kind of in his hands and the Republicans' hands, to be honest. And as they were saying, they were trying to push the $2,000 checks what Trump was with other agendas, and that caused it to get rejected. And maybe some things should be standalone bills. Maybe standalone bills shouldn't be up for filibuster. It should just go to a vote, and it's whatever the vote comes out to, it's that. But continuing debate on it, it just takes longer for people to get, let's say, stimulus checks or child care or whatever it is. So I got that from an article. I found that interesting. On to the next slide. So this is the end of my video, guys. As you can see, I got the Capitol. and it's filibuster, and it's like crushing the building, symbolizing that it's crushing the system. As you can see, the gears, the working system. It's crushing the building. It has filibustered at the bottom. It just represents, and it's also actually a water pump. If you can see the guy at the end, and there's no water coming out, like it's not working. It's not working for this the system we have, and it's going against a lot of things. And I just wanted to wrap up my video with that to show you guys an illustration, artistic illustration of how it's affecting the Capitol and things of that nature. The House and the Senate, all the same. It's filibustered. That should be the new term. But don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Have a blessed day, and thank you guys for watching this video. Peace.